All right, everyone, welcome to the second part of Paul Gorbov's talk on the Copernican multiverse of sets. Paul is from the University of Gothenburg, and like I said, he will continue from last time. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I've been at this work has been done at University of Gothenburg. Just a few days ago, I actually started on a new employment at the University of Stockholm. So last time I went through the general technique involved in this Copernican multiverse. So just recapping a little bit, this is the main lemma. It's a little bit technical, but basically you can have you can start with a really great variety of different revision parameters, and this parameter set, in particular the UNY parameter, sets what your multiverse conception is. So which models of the set F or set theory are to be included in the multiverse. It's the idea is that you should be able to plug in more or less any conception of the multiverse here. And then there is this theory S, which in the end gets interpreted, and that's where you put additional multiverse axioms that are involving the new predicate, in particular mod. So the main thing that is being done in this work is that we introduce this untyped models relation. So it generalizes the usual defined satisfaction relation. And so the second part of the talk here, I'm going to talk about one particular axiom that we call self-perception and its connection to the Gitmans model of the multiverse. So starting out with this self-perception axiom, it looks like this. So we are in a context where we're working with the language of set theory. We have also added the term calculus to implement syntax in Gödel's manner. It's convenient to have a term calculus when you're referring to syntax. And we have the mod predicate and the UNY predicate as well. But now we also introduce a constant self and the function symbol iota. And this self-perception axiom says that self is a universe and iota is an L-isomorphism from V to self. So this states then that there is a universe that is L-isomorphic to the background universe, meaning that it is isomorphic in the language of set theory. You cannot have L-mod isomorphism here, basically because of this liar paradox phenomena. So this is what we can hope for, and yeah, so that's the basic axiom, and it gives a quite direct answer to the main question that I showed, and the main question behind our research is what is the relationship between the background universe in which we situate the multiverse and the universes of that multiverse. We can imagine that we have a model of the multiverse. There are lots of models of ZF sitting in that model, and we ask about the relationship between this background model and the models within it. And
sorry, V denotes the background universe, or is that the meaning of
exactly.
V here? Okay.
Yeah. So right, and right. So this gives us then this axiom says that, well, this universe where we're sitting is isomorphic to one of the universes within it, and yeah, that universe is given the name self here. And it's not essential that we need to have a constant for this, but it's convenient. And in order to interpret this theory then, so, well, I went through the basic theory of this untyped modulation in the previous talk. So we have these compositional axioms basically saying that the modulation satisfies the Tarskian conditions of satisfaction. We also have this necessitation rule, which we think of as the Copernican principle. This is saying that anything that's provable in the background theory should also prove that holds in every universe, to make sure that the background universe is not special. And so to those axioms and that rule of necessitation, we add this axiom of self-perception. And now the question is then, how can we create a model of this multiverse, and how can we interpret it in a more familiar theory? So the more familiar theory here is going to be a theory of truth over ZF. And so if we start with ZF and we add a truth predicate and compositional axioms of truth, these are similarly the Tarskian conditions, but yeah, that also involves a base case. So, well, it's a very natural theory of truth over a theory. It's usually studied over PA, but you can do the same thing over ZF. And what's important about this kind of theory is that you quantify internally over formulas. So you have axioms such as, if phi is true and psi is true, then phi conjunction psi is true. And so if you just add this theory along with the separation for the extended language to the truth predicate, if you just add this to ZF, that's a conservative extension. And then you can add this global reflection principle. And that's when we start increasing the strength, but it's very slight. I mean, all of this is happening well below Morse-Kelley set theory, or I mean class theory. Okay, so the global reflection is then saying that if, so it's quantifying, it's a universal quantification internally. So it's saying for all sigma, if sigma is provable, then sigma is true, expressing a soundness principle. And so the revision parameters that we use now to, well, actually these are not the revision parameters that we're finally going to be using, but this helps to explain how this problem is solved. So let's say that we start with T0 is this ZF plus untyped compositional truth plus separation for language with a truth predicate. So untyped compositional truth, like I said, for example, has this axiom displayed here. And then the hierarchy consists in iterating global reflection over that theory. And then we take the universes on each stage of the hierarchy to be the countable recursively saturated models of the preceding theory. What this gives us is this picture. So what I'm trying to show here is that if we take a universe, a model UK plus 2 from the K plus 2 iteration of the universes. Then it's going to contain a model in the lower, the decremented version of the universes as interpreted within that model, within UK plus 2. And that one is going to be isomorphic to UK plus 2. So this isomorphism here between UK plus 2 and UK plus 1, to be strictly formal, you would need to externalize UK plus 1 from UK plus 2. So right now, as is displayed here, UK plus 1 is an element of the model UK plus 2, but that's some extra sort of technical definition that would need to be involved. So I'm just skipping over that here and writing UK plus 2 is isomorphic to UK plus 1. And you can iterate this downwards as far as you like. So the reason why these are isomorphic, this is goes back to Friedman's back and forth technique. This is a particular version of using that technique. Here, global reflection is essentially used. The fact that the models are countable recursively saturated also plays a big role, of course. And then, yeah, the technique by Friedman is used to get this isomorphism. So what Wilmers showed in 1975 is that if you have a countable recursively saturated model of ZF, then there is a B alpha within that model, such that if you externalize that B alpha, then it's isomorphic to the whole model. But of course, then if the model you started with does not satisfy the consistency of ZF, then that model is not actually going to be a model of ZF as seen from the bigger model. But what we have in this situation here is that we are building this hierarchy of global reflection on top of ZF, and in this case UK plus 2 thinks that UK plus 1 is a model of K plus 1's iterated global reflection. So in particular, it's a model of ZF. So that's the basic idea here, what's going on. The actual proof, so we show that GR omega, omega iterated global reflection over ZF. We show that that interprets CM plus self-perception plus necessitation. But it's a little bit more involved than what I displayed on the previous slide. So I'm just going through the major steps in the proof. So first of all, observe that GR omega is omega inconsistent. This is useful. That means that we can get hold of a non-standard number. We can define a non-standard number and use that. And we define an auxiliary sequence of theories SPM. These are similar to the global reflection hierarchy, but here this axiom of self-perception is formulated. So these theories actually have this iota and self within them. So the property of having this isomorphism is written into those theories, SP to the n. And then the third step here is that when you're working within GR omega, it's omega inconsistent, so we can get hold of this non-standard number D, and then we can make a model of of the dth iteration of this theory SP. And that suffices for getting an interpretation of SP omega in GR omega. So that is denoted J here, that interpretation. And so in the next major step then is to interpret the theory we want here, CM plus self-perception plus NEC, in this SP omega. So just for this slide, I'm using the letter Q for that theory that we want to interpret. And the main lemma shows that we get a local interpretation. So for each standard number n, we get a better and better interpretation. And composing these interpretations, we have now that GR omega locally interprets Q, this theory that we want to interpret, by the interpretations K, N for various standard number n's. And now there are actually two different techniques that you can prove this theorem, but the one that we have chosen here is that we can now use an overspill argument. So for each sigma in the theory Q that we want to interpret, we look at the interpretation as defined internally in the theory GR omega, and put that interpretation of sigma under the truth predicate. And that enables us to do this overspill argument on the index of the interpretation. So we can actually get hold of a non-standard number t here that such that we have true of k sub t of sigma, and that then gives us a full interpretation of Q. So it's essential here in this particular proof. We used a truth predicate that plays an essential role. So it's actually because this theory here, it's only self-perception. Self-perception can be written as a single axiom. And so you could actually get away without using the truth predicate here, because since it's just one axiom, you're able to just do an overspill argument. But this technique is more general, so it can be applied also if we would have a schema of infinitely many sentences and not just this one axiom, self-perception. So it shows the power of working with a theory like GR omega, where you have access to a truth predicate. Yeah, so of course, feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions, or if there's anything you want me to clarify. So moving on then to the Gitman-Hopkins model of the multiverse. So Hopkins suggested axioms for the multiverse. One is that the multiverse should be closed under inner models satisfying ZF, and that it should be closed under forcing extensions. And perhaps a more controversial axiom saying that every universe is countable and omega non-standard from the perspective of some other universe. So the idea being that if you have a universe, then there's another universe that contains that universe as an element, and that universe then thinks that this is a countable and omega non-standard universe. And there's also another type of axiom included, which has to do with the backwards ultra powers and those kind of embeddings, which I am not going into here. But there's a theorem by Gitman and Hopkins that the class of countable recursively saturated models of ZFC is a model of these axioms. And so that coincides then with what we need here for the self-perception axiom. So the self-perception axiom is quite well motivated from just thinking about this question about how does the background universe relate to the universes within the multiverse. And it turns out that the same kind of property is very relevant for being able to get these to satisfy these axioms of Hopkins. So it's striking. It's striking that the same that there's such a similarity between these models, and so therefore we conjecture that if we combine these theories, that should also, basically our techniques should suffice to construct a model of the combined theory, also adding these Hopkins multiverse axioms to the theory. And basically,
excuse me, could I just ask, because you said that this self-perception axiom is well motivated, could you maybe explain the motivation for it? I mean, maybe I misunderstood it. I understood it as saying essentially, did it say that every model in the multiverse thinks it's isomorphic to the background universe? Was that it? Or?
No. So it's just saying that one of the universes in the multiverse is isomorphic to the background. So it's saying that the background universe is represented in its multiverse.
In the multiverse. Oh, I see. Okay, I thought that was the intended. Okay, yeah, that's very natural then. Yes. Okay, so self is not interpreted in every model of the multiverse as itself. It is just interpreted as it's so to speak one of the the models in the multiverse. Is that the idea?
Right. Yeah.
I see.
So it's basically like the background universe is able to see itself as one of the universes in the multiverse, and then
okay.
Also, if you go and look in any of the universes in the multiverse, and you jump into that one, then that has a multiverse within it, and that will also have an interpretation of self. So that will also have the same kind of thing going on. So, yeah.
Okay.
So that's what you get from necessitation. That anything that you can prove in the background multiverse theory is also going to hold in each universe. So.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And so this is basically something that fell out of scope of the paper. It was already past 30 pages, and I guess we were running out of energy. But it shouldn't really be a problem to prove this conjecture. But basically it's about that you have to deal with models of these iterations of GR omega, and show that this forcing, for example, preserves that theory in the right way. And so it might be a bit technical because it involves this extra vocabulary, but it looks definitely like this should hold. Right, so moving on to the takeaways, summarizing. We have that this Copernican principle suggests an untyped approach to to truth in the universe, what's here captured by the model relation with this necessitation rule. The untyped approach increases the expressive resources available when formulating multiverse theories. So, for example, you can quantify over how many times you iterate the mod relation. we provide a recipe for making your multiverse conception Copernican. So basically set the base level of the unit predicate to be the collection of ZF models of your multiverse, and then choose a hierarchy of theories and a hierarchy of universes judiciously. So basically they have to admit this rule of called next star here, which relates different levels of that hierarchy. And basically you need to show that the axioms of your multiverse are satisfied throughout the hierarchy, and that's I guess the work that needs to be done to incorporate the Hopkins axioms and then apply the main lemma. So that's the basic technique that you can make use of by our results. And then there's a connection to the Gitmans Hopkins multiverse. So yeah, that also uses countable recursively saturated models as universes. These are the kind of models that can be expanded to satisfy the self-perception. And iterated global reflection is closely related to this. So it gives us the hierarchy that we need, and it's also very useful that theory is omega inconsistent. So that gives us, in the end, full interpretation. And yeah, in the Gitmans Hopkins paper, there's also a discussion about whether when you consider a universe looking at another universe, whether it suffices that it thinks that the other universe, does it need to actually think that the other universe is a model of ZF? Even if just externally they're all models of ZF, it can happen that when one universe looks at another, it doesn't think it's a model of ZF. And if you require that it should think it's a model of ZF, then you do need to think about some kind of reflection axiom. So that's involved in that paper, and basically one step is taken with a particular reflection principle. And so I think one thing from our paper is that it's showing that global reflection is a very natural reflection principle to use here when you want to make that kind of step. And also we're arguing that this step should really be taken omega many times, because that's what you need to actually get necessitation to get the Copernican principle to hold. But I mean, there is also another approach you can take, and that is to consider that you have these various universes which are models of ZF, and then when one universe looks at another, we don't require that it should think it's a model of ZF. And that brings us to a kind of a different path, and that's something that I touched on in the previous part, is that it's basically related to, I will go back all the way here. When we axiomatize our theory, we have this axiom multiverse sub ZF. So the way that we have approached this is to have the sentence version here, but if you have a schema instead, then actually, the background universe is not going to think that all of the universes are models of ZF. It's only going to satisfy the schema that for every axiom of ZF, every universe satisfies that axiom. So quantifying externally and not internally, and that's another avenue you can take, and our techniques are also apply to that avenue, where our lemma is formulated to have that kind of generality. So I guess that is a question, but what is the better way to think about the multiverse and setting it up? So yeah, this is the last slide, and I'm happy to go into discussion. As for me, I actually have one question myself, and that is because I don't do hands-on work in the multiverse. I don't work with forcing extensions and inner models and these kind of things. So I'm curious, Vika, for example, about what you think about this self-perception axiom. So that gives you actually a set that you can work with and do forcing extensions on, which is in your instead of doing class forcing. I'm thinking you can have access also to just a set which is isomorphic to your background universe. And is that something that would be natural, working as a working mathematician in the multiverse?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting question. Thanks, Paul, for both of your talks. They have been super interesting. And I gave a talk to non-set theorists, mathematicians, about set theory and about forcing. And this question came up in discussion, of course, about what does it mean to force over a model of set theory when this is supposed to be all that you have. And this is definitely this kind of framework would be one.
Now we lost your sound. At least I can't hear.
Victor, was that the Warwick talk or a different talk?
Yeah, it was. Oh, Adam, you're here. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the question? I'm trying to remember back. I mean, because we had a long discussion after. Was this like a question by Ed, by the applied mathematician? Or?
Yeah. So this was, I think, at the in the discussion part, and the question was, so of course, non-set theorists think that the purpose of set theory is really to figure out the properties of this ambient background, right? So how do you do forcing over the ambient background when that is all that you have?
Oh, right. And this, I mean, this is an elaboration of the earlier question of basically why doesn't the construction of the quote unquote construction of the cumulative hierarchy prove the consistency of set theory? Right. That was the prior question.
Yeah. Right. That was that was the lead in. And so, of course, having this kind of approach, right, having a model that essentially reflects the properties of your universe would be one really nice philosophical
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Do people have questions for Paul?
I have a question for you, Vic. I hope it was recorded last week. I came in very late, extremely late, and then I was meaning to catch up before, well, like the hour before this, and I couldn't find a video.
I uploaded it today. I was a little late in uploading it, but it's available on YouTube now. Yeah.
Yeah, I may not be able to update the website to post the link, but it's on the Unbiologic YouTube channel.
Okay, I didn't realize. Okay, so I can just go there directly.
Yeah, so you never need to wait for my updates. Actually, it's much easier to just go to YouTube and Biologic. And then
I have a backlog of videos to watch, but I should certainly watch part 1 of a video I just saw part 2 of. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
Can I ask my question? This is my general question that I asked you in your talk, and I've asked many times, and just I need to be told the answer, or I need the clarification always, right? Which is to what extent the Gitman-Hopkins work is or is not quote unquote a first order axiomatized theory. What does it mean to have a theory in the model in that setting there? Because there's another conception due to Steele that I think has a formal language, but is much tighter, for example, right? So maybe Paul can say something. I mean, this overall approach is meant to be able to discuss all of these, right? I glanced at the paper briefly a year ago, and I came away with that, but I didn't really actually understand anything.
Right. Yeah. So neither Hopkins or in his formulation of the axioms, nor in the Gitman-Hopkins paper, is it formulated as a first-order theory. So it's
oh, I see. So in other words, when there's a statement that quote unquote has a model, that's sort of like saying like their set of axioms as a model. That would be sort of like saying that some collection of property that there exists a topological space with some collection of properties, or just a group, right? It's no more, right? It's not any more foundational than that.
Right. So exactly, it's defined as yeah, exactly a collection of models with some closure properties and
where the sense of the closure properties is with reference to the background discussion, I suppose.
Well, the closure property is something like that.
Well, I mean, if I want to say how I have if there's a model there and all the inner models should be there. So do I need an ambient discussion that's a meaning to inner?
Yeah, no, I mean, you need, so the only way that you can view, as far as I understand, Hopkins axioms at the moment is by interpreting them in a collection of toy models in an ambient universe of set theory.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think
working conventions, maybe you could, because that's just quantifying over sets. But quantifying over inner models would be sort of like quantifying over outer models, which you can't do.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can do any of it, really. I mean, I think what Paul is trying to present is in some way a way of formalizing this kind of system.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's no problem to actually make a first order theory. You just have to. I mean, so the way that Hopkins presents his axiom is basically like you're working instead of, you have some background meta theory. Let's say it's maybe set of C. And then in there you can talk about the models of a set of C and forcing extensions like those kind of relations. And so it's just being talked about on that, the usual way we do mathematics. But of course, then you can just take a step out of that meta theory and just say, well, okay, you're working in some foundational mathematics. And we can just take a model of that theory. So
in the original setting, I guess. So in the original setting, they talk basically just about the HC of some fixed model of set theory, right? Just all the models are countable, right? And so you only talk about a small chunk of the universe.
Yeah.
Right. All those words are in the sense of your ambient background. There was a year ago, there was a talk. I don't know who gave it, but then I mean, there was somehow it mentioned, maybe Vika mentioned, there's always this sort of chicken and egg discussion about multiverse, about, fixing your background versus relativizing your background. Can you recall that, Vika? Someone was saying like, it's such and such, because it's such and such sort of like, quote unquote, good, evidence or philosophical story or whatever for the multiverse picture versus a set theory picture. And then the response, I think it was your response, is that, you could, there's a sort of infinite regress of the one into the other.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's our philosophy in this paper.
Oh, okay, good.
That's basically what I was trying to show here on one of the first slides.
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful slide.
Right.
So can I ask, I missed that, I missed your first talk, unfortunately, but you were talking about this necessitation axiom. Is that something saying like that in a sense, like if a model, I mean, so first off, are you considering the universes in the multiverse to be, do you have some relations? Do you allow for relations between them, like being an inner model of or being a forcing extension of and stuff like that? I mean, so you have this additional language, right? And I'm not exactly sure what that is for. Is that there to be able to express how the different universes in the multiverse are related?
Well, so okay, basically, you don't really need. I mean, of course, you can talk about forcing extensions and these kind of things without this additional vocabulary that we have. So
Sure, but not about inner
at
models.
its core, what this is doing is that it's introducing the untyped primitive truth in the universe relation, and that so it increases the expressive power, because then you can iterate this, and you can really start talking about going many steps down. You're in a multiverse, you go into a universe that has a multiverse, you go into a universe in there, and so on. You can really it gives you access to that dimension, the sort of dimension of depth.
Okay, so each universe has its version of the whole multiverse in it,
Right,
so to speak. I see. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that is very much related to this Copernican principle. And
Right.
So that the sort of fundamental question is, how does the background universe of the multiverse relate to its internal universes? And so what we consider then to be an important philosophical principle that really should be satisfied by multiverse theory is that it should not hold a privileged position over the theories of its internal universes. The background theory should not somehow be special. And so a way to capture this formula is then in the form of this deductive rule. So it's not an axiom. We can think of it more as a closure property on the background multiverse theory. And it's as displayed there. And so that means that since the background multiverse theory, let's say that we have an axiom saying that there is a universe, the multiverse is not trivial, then if the background multiverse theory proves that, then it also proves that every universe satisfies that. So every universe will then have a multiverse within it, for example.
I see. So,
because otherwise the background multiverse will be special if that is the
Right.
one that has a multiverse, but not everybody does. So
Okay.
so it goes back to this idea that we don't think that there is an absolute some sort of absolute background.
So it kind of doesn't matter which one you choose as your background universe. You could, in a sense, you could pick any of them.
Exactly.
You could pick any universe in the multiverse, and it would give rise to a similar multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone should satisfy the multiverse theory. Yeah.
Yeah, that's natural. I agree.
And so I mean, it's trying to get a new angle, I guess, on this divide between meta theory and object theory, and saying that there is no absolute background. We can go back as many times as we want, and that's basically what's happening with these hierarchies in the details of the mathematics here. We have these hierarchies of reflection principles, and that's you can think of that as being meta theories going back omega times.
Very nice. Okay. How is it? Any further questions?
The slides themselves, I guess, are not on the YouTube channel, but they will be posted.
I can send them if you want.
Yeah, if you send me the slides, I will post them next to the abstract.
Great. Yeah, I want to catch up. I mean, maybe I should. This is the paper that was posted to the archive a year ago, some version of it, or yeah, I should look at that again.
But yeah, there's a new version now on the archive, and that's the final version. So now it's been accepted. And
I don't recall. I mean, there was someone else. There was someone who was giving a talk in the seminar around a year ago about multiverses, and then somehow I had just seen this posted. I mean, so that it wasn't you, right? And then so I'm just curious.
Was it Caroline?
Sorry?
Who would it be? Was it Caroline Antos? Wonder who else would it be?
I guess Carolyn, yeah, she did mention
Maybe.
multiverses and stuff like that.
I mean, I guess I could just go look at the schedule, but I mean, it was definitely sometime during, it was certainly, you know, post lockdown. So maybe during the summer.
I don't remember. No, Caroline spoke in the spring.
Yeah, no, that wasn't, yeah, no, it wasn't that. It wasn't those. No, it was a year ago. So how was it coming up?
I don't know.
I think it was this seminar. It could have been one of the other set theory seminars, but anyway.
Okay. Shall we just call it a day, maybe?
Yeah. Very confusing.
Thanks again, Paul. Really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great talk. I enjoyed it too. I will definitely watch the first part. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next week is Monroe, and he hasn't sent me the title and abstract. I will put it up once I have it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you next week. Bye.